imagine something and then focus on it and see how more and more of it doesn't come towards you during the week. It's not magic. Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Taryn McCarthy, and this is the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm so grateful to have you here again with me this week. Thank you so much for tuning in last week and learning a little bit more about who I am and my intentions for this community. And today we're going to dive right in to one of the greatest tools that I've learned to entwine with my arsenal, and that is the law of attraction. What you focus on expands. This has made such a huge impact on my life, not just in terms of my business and enormous growth in my business, but also in terms of my own fulfillment and happiness. Next week, I'm excited to share with you another powerful tool, and that is the power of gratitude. And I know many people roll their eyes when they hear the word gratitude again and again, but please join me next week. I'm excited to show you how you can incorporate some of these things into your own life and see real measurable building growth, not only in the provable, measurable success of your practice or your business, but also in the people around you and of your own fulfillment. So join me next week. That's going to be a really powerful one as well. But today, let's dive right in. I just am so excited to share this with you because it really works very quickly. And one of those tools that you can have real life evidence as soon as today. So what am I talking about here? Well, as we dive into this further, I do just want to acknowledge you for a minute that you've even entertained this discussion. This is a difficult one for many of us in leadership with successful businesses who've had a very linear way of thinking throughout our whole lives. Once again, I know that if you're in this discussion, if this is of meaning to you, then you probably know how to work hard. Working hard has not been a problem for you. You know when to put in the time and how to put one foot in front of the other. But what's lacking for you is that feeling of fulfillment. So this is where we need to get a little bit deep with emotions. And just the fact that you've even made it to episode 2 speaks volumes to your character and also how much you really want to make a change in your life and in the lives of the people around you. So, as we talk about this today, I want to share with you one of my first exposures to this idea, this concept of what you focus on expands. And I first heard a little whisper of this when I heard Tony Robbins speak. And Tony was telling about an experience he had where he was learning how to do some racing, learn how to drive race cars. And so he purchased this class and he went by himself and the instructor put him in the car and here they go driving down the racetrack and they're doing all kinds of crazy moves. And the driving instructor has the wheel at this point. So he's just introducing Tony to the concepts that he's going to learn over the next few days. And right near the end of the first lesson, they're heading straight for a wall at a very high rate of speed. And as Tony's heart is beating out of his chest, he's heading straight for the wall. His eyes are locked on where they're going. They suddenly do a quick move and they zip out of it, spin out of it, and drive to safety. And so with his heart in his throat and he's panicking, but he's also excited and he can't wait to learn these cool tricks. The instructor said, well, you're going to learn how to do this over the next few days. And Tony's reaction was, well, that's insane. That's crazy. I cannot imagine doing that last move you just did. And the instructor said, well, the reason why this seems so incredible to you is because you can't imagine heading to a wall and getting out of it at the last minute because that's your mindset. He said, the trick is the entire time you were focusing on the wall. The secret is you have to focus somewhere else to get out of it. 100% of the time, if you are speeding towards a wall and you are focusing on that wall and the impending doom and the inevitability of slamming into that wall, 100% of the time you will hit that wall. And so when they were learning this over the next few days, apparently the instructor didn't take Tony back to that really death-defying move instantly. They learned some other tips. And then all of a sudden, some button was pressed when Tony least expected it, and now they're heading for the wall. And he couldn't peel his eyes. He knew what his instructor had said, and he couldn't peel his eyes off the wall, and they're heading straight for it. And at the last minute, the instructor literally took his face and turned it in the direction he wanted Tony to turn. And they spun out of the way, and they spun to safety. The analogy here is so apropos to our own happiness and to our own success in business. So often we are staring straight at the wall. We see the problem, we see the doom, and we just cannot take our eyes off of it. And the secret is focusing on what you want. Another idea, another way to say this is focusing on the solution more than the problem, but really turning your attention towards it. Because what you turn your attention toward will come towards you. You will turn your whole thought process towards the solution. It's really a beautiful idea. The secret of it is knowing what you want. What is it that we want to look towards? Well, of course, in this analogy of the race car, it's obvious. I want to be anywhere but there. I want to look anywhere away. Where am I going? Where's the path of least resistance away from this hitting of the wall? Now that's the magic. Focusing on that instead of getting our heart rate up, instead of getting all anxious and not being able to make empowered decisions. The key is being able to make an empowered decision from a place of security, a place of conviction, as opposed to making decisions from a place of fear and anxiety, which we all know are not good for business and not good for ourselves. Now let's take this concept one step further. I'm going to call this concept the orange Jeep concept. So about a year ago, I was looking for a new car, and I had been driving a Jeep Wrangler. It's my favorite car. I have many reasons for why it's my dream car, and maybe one day I'll tell you those too. But I was driving a silver Jeep, and I fell in love with this orange Jeep. Now, there was a lot of insecurities, believe it or not, in this very secure human. I felt insecure about driving a bright orange Jeep around town. So I had to wrap my head around it first. And I told my kids, this bright orange Jeep, and I got their opinion. Their opinion matters a lot to me. I usually rope them in on my schemes. Anyway, the next thing, we started seeing orange Jeeps everywhere. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever thought about a car that you wanted to get, and all of a sudden, everyone's driving it? Everywhere you go, it's like, we never knew so many people drove orange Jeeps. It wasn't even just Jeeps in general. It was specifically orange Jeeps. It was amazing. Now, is it that all of a sudden the universe brought orange Jeeps to us just because we were thinking about buying an orange Jeep ourselves? Or is it that once we trained ourselves to focus on that orange Jeep, we started noticing everywhere there existed one? And this is where the magic of focusing on something and having it expand comes along. This is the magic and the power of intention. This is where things like writing down in a journal what you want or creating a vision board for what you want really works. I did this a few years ago when I really wanted to run a marathon. Now, I've been running for a few years, but I'd never run that far. I'd run a couple of half marathons, but never had I ever run more than 13 miles. To run double that seemed enormous. But I put it on a vision board. So a vision board, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's really a craft project. For me, it's just fun. That's why I started doing them. So I created a vision board, and I found a picture in a glossy magazine of this really strong woman running, put it up there, and I put a 26.2 up there. And, there were some other things I was excited to envision for my life. And there's something about putting that intention visually in front of you and kind of making it a reality for yourself that allows you to open up your mind and allow you to open up permission to allow some other information to come in. So all of a sudden, a friend of mine had offered me a Hal Higdon running guide of how to get to 26.2, and I thought, okay, let me do it. Let me try it. And, somebody else offered me a running group that I could jump in on their running group once a week. And I thought, yeah, that's probably how I'm going to give myself accountability. So I make sure I run the miles and I put the miles in. And then somebody else turned me on to a really great podcast. And I thought, well, I'm only going to allow myself to listen to that podcast when I'm running. So that's the way I'm going to get into running more miles and putting in more hours. Well, it worked. The next thing, I found myself running a marathon. An incredible experience of my life, which I highly recommend. But I'm convinced I would not have seen that through had I not announced to myself and perhaps to others that that was my intention. I turned my head towards that image. I turned my intention towards that goal. And suddenly, out of the woodwork, all these offers started coming. Might my friend have talked about Hal Higdon's running series if I hadn't put that on the vision board? Well, maybe, but maybe I wouldn't have heard it. Might I have heard about those friends running once a week? Yeah, probably. I probably would have heard about them doing it, but I wouldn't have sparked my attention to the same degree. So just putting my intentions in that direction allowed things to expand in my experience. So this is where I invite you to try this on your own. This was what I was alluding to earlier in the podcast, was an opportunity for you to see this in your own life as soon as today. Just imagine something and then focus on it and see how more and more of it doesn't come towards you during the week. It's not magic. It's just your intentions are wrapping themselves around these opportunities that are coming towards you. They're coming anyway, but we're so good as human beings at blocking things out. It's our survival mechanism. It's a basic psychological strength that we as human beings have, and that's the ability to delete or negate or generalize all the extra information around us. And by focusing your attention on something in particular, something specific, we're allowing ourselves to filter those things through again. Those little whispers that ordinarily we're putting blocks up against. Because that's how we've evolved as a species. We can't constantly be alerted to all the visual and audio and sensory stimuli all around us. We'd go crazy. We've had to develop these barriers, these deleting mechanisms, these generalizing mechanisms. Well, now what I'm saying is, let's, instead of focusing on the problem, let's focus on solutions. Or even better than solutions, focus even bigger on dreams. Because that is the power of an empowered leader. A leader who can fly at 50,000 feet and see what's happening below her and see beyond the problems, see beyond those imminent solutions, and see the greater purpose for her business, or the greater purpose for your own life. That's the power behind focusing on something. And that's the law of attraction. The attraction is that suddenly you'll start to see things that you didn't see before. And friends will start calling you. And old acquaintances will start getting back in touch with you. Or opportunities will pop up in your mind or in your very reality That's all related to what you're focusing on. And here's the other side of it. When you focus on negative things, that expands as well. I've had that experience too. I remember there was a time in my life where I felt like I was living from one crisis to the next. That was the reality I had created for myself. I had imagined that I was just putting out fires. I even remember using that language. I wish I would just stop having crises. Now, looking back at them, I can call them something else. Was I really having one crisis after another? No, but that's what I was focusing on, and that's what it felt like. And the same thing happens in business. You know, it's not unusual in dentistry for us to have a team, and every now and then a team member leaves for many reasons. Either they're not happy in the position, or they find another opportunity, or someone has a baby, or someone gets sick. It's not unusual. It happens very, very frequently. But when we start to tell ourselves a negative story about it, then we start to see that happening more and more frequently. What you focus on expands, and all of a sudden, what was not related at all seems like it's all stacking up in a negative pattern. And we start telling ourselves stories that aren't true to justify these negative things happening in our lives. So let's talk about a tool. What is one way that you can start incorporating more positive things in your life so that you can focus on the positivity and then see the abundance that flows in afterwards? Well, what I'd like to offer you is 3 steps, 3 questions to ask yourself. What do I want? What do I want? And it's so funny because many times we ask ourselves that question and we don't know the answer. There are many reasons for that, and there's another whole podcast coming up about these 3 permissions. But the first one is, what do I want? And then the second one is, why do I want that? The second one is getting in touch to what the purpose is behind what we want. And the only reason for establishing those first 2 in light of what we were talking about this morning is because it establishes on your vision board, on your mental vision board, it establishes what that image is. I want to run a marathon. Why? That's the second part. Why do you want to run a marathon? Whatever the reason is, for me, I wanted the experience of doing something incredible. I wanted to do something that I didn't think my body could do. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do something phenomenal. To me, that was a marathon, and it was phenomenal. But I needed to marry that question of what is it and why. And then the third and very critical part of this trilogy is giving yourself permission to pursue and seeing in your community where you can get support. Who can help me? How am I going to get there? What steps do I need to take? This is where we have such value, wealth, abundance as team leaders, as business leaders. We have an entourage of people ready to help us, ready to delegate to. But even if you are not a business owner, you have the resources all around you in your community, in your cohort, in your friends, in your family. The resources are there. You just have to give yourself permission to ask. I know what I want. I know why I want it. Now, who can I ask for help? That friend that gave me that Hal Higdon race marathon training program, that's awesome. I had no idea. I didn't even know that she was a runner, but she had this resource for me. I didn't even know that I had a group of friends that actually met up to go running together. Once again, huge accountability, support, and strength for me to help me realize that goal. So those are the 3 important steps. What is it that you really want? How are you going to, why do you want to do it? And then how and who are you going to ask for support and for help? This is such huge news. Breaking it down in that simple fashion simplifies it, and it works for happiness too. Even if the answer to your question, what do I want? I just want to be happy. Why? Why? Because I want my child to see what happiness looks like. I want my daughter to see that you can be successful and happy and feel fulfilled and not feel like you have to sacrifice your own dreams and your own worth just for the pursuit of success. Oh, that means so much to me. That why is so big for me. And then who around me am I going to seek for support? That's when I started looking into this community of personal development, of happiness. That's when I started reaching out for coaches. How can I find happiness? That's when I started seeing the abundance and the wealth around me and all the resources I do have. And all of a sudden it started flowing towards me when I gave myself permission to pursue that dream. Thank you again. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you. This time has just flown by. I hope this has been of value to you. I hope that you have found some inspiration and that you found some tools that you can use in your daily life. Please reach out to me on Facebook or on Instagram at Embrace the Lead. That's where you'll find me on social media. Or check me out on embracethelead.com. And always, please subscribe to this podcast so that I can bring you more and more great value. I look forward to seeing you next week. We're going to talk about one of my very favorite, most powerful topics, gratitude. And thank you again for this opportunity. Today is going to be a great day.